I first encountered sociology as a mature student and as a single parent. I took the decision to study sociology at degree level because I wanted knowledge that would help me better understand my social landscape and the experiences of myself and my family. In its broad coverage of topics such as inequality and class, the family and education, sociology offered me that. My experiences navigating the system as the daughter of first-generation migrants and as a black single parent politicized me. As an undergraduate, I was very fortunate to study in a department that valued my unique perspective and ideas. My asking of difficult questions was rewarded. Whereas having spoken to other people about their experiences in other universities, that's not always the case. The question that I chose to focus on for my PhD research was how single mothers have raised their sons to adulthood in the inner city. And I chose to focus on black families. As an expectant mother, I knew that I would be raising my son alone. When I found out that I was expecting a son, I was fearful. Like any other parent, I wanted to raise my son to be able to fulfill his full potential, be free in the world, and have every opportunity available to him. But also with the knowledge that I would be raising a black boy in England, from what I saw around me, I felt that there would be challenges to that, and I wasn't sure how I would be able to negotiate that alone. Black women seeking helpful information on raising their sons as single parents are more likely to find alarming statistics. When single mothering is considered alongside blackness, the prognosis about these families and what the future might entail become very grim. I was hoping that my research could offer at least some vital context to that, and at best offer some more constructive knowledge. Black single mothers and the sons they raise have been unfairly demonised. This family dynamic has been associated with social problems such as knife crime, civil unrest, and the educational failure of black young people. Single parent families have been linked to broken Britain. There are caricatures specific to black single mothers of sons, characterised as domineering and uncaring. We emasculate the boys we raise, either producing men labelled as weak or hypermasculine. There have been many sensationalist newspaper reports on this family dynamic, and the headlines have included, "Black boys are too feminized," "Can single mums turn boys into men?" "Broken families fueling black crime." According to government statistics, single-parent families make up 19% of black households in comparison to almost 7% of white households and almost 6% of Asian households. Preoccupation with these demographic-specific figures has eclipsed any real attention to people's lived experiences in these families. It's important that we consider this. 1 in 4 of all English families are single-parent families. So perhaps it's worth figuring out how these families function and how they can be supported to work well. My research sees these families as part of family diversity and does not begin with the assumption that they are a problem. Black single mothers and their sons are surprisingly under-researched together, particularly in the Black British context, given how much they are linked to social problems. So I wanted to transcend stereotypes and assumptions to find out what these women's experiences of parenting were and what the young men's experiences of emergence into manhood was. So those who contributed to my research were women who had raised their sons to adulthood already, and men who had been raised by single mothers, all from Black British families. My research explored the nature of mother-son relationships and also their societal experiences. And while there were struggles and frustrations, there were also many achievements and joys. I'm still analysing my data, but what I'm finding is really exciting. Often both mothers and sons were very aware of their positioning in society due to their urban location, their racialized identities, and the structure of their families. And this awareness often drove them to resist this positioning. Many of the women that I spoke to had degrees that they earned after becoming mothers. The majority of the sole parent women I spoke to had used the qualifications they gained as mothers to then attain professions. They were teachers and therapists and social workers. They worked out of economic necessity for the survival of their families. These are the single parents who aren't discussed, perhaps because they don't fit the negative narrative. Most of the sons I interviewed also pursued higher education or vocations. Among them were a theatre producer and a solicitor turned DJ, as well as many university students. None of them could be said to need their aspirations raised, but that is the claim that's constantly made. Purposeful black men like these are rarely seen at societal level, giving the impression that they don't exist. They have been typically positioned as underachieving. For example, there was a report made to the Labour government in 2007 which claimed black boys and young men who are doing well are the exception rather than the rule. The fact that they have been managing to overcome differential standpoints to enter higher education or develop fulfilling careers is not something that's been recognised or celebrated as it should. Another finding that was also quite key was that most of the sons that I interviewed had maintained contact with their fathers, but there's an ongoing narrative about absent fathers that doesn't reflect this reality. There was a minority among my interviewees who genuinely did not know their fathers, but this did not produce the angry, violent young man, that caricature that's constantly depicted. Of course, there was emotion around these particular circumstances, but the young men did not succumb to them. Single mothers and sons raised by them do their best to take control of their lives, and their agency has been overlooked. Also overlooked has been the role of the social conditions in shaping the nature of people's lived experiences. The quality of neighbourhoods that single-parent families have access to, and what this then brings young people into contact with. What some young black men experience in schools. The cost of higher education now, and the fact that this might be a deterrent to mature women wanting to return. There are many obstacles that single mothers and their sons must navigate to survive, let alone thrive, but this is often not accounted for. The default has been to blame mothers. It's just been to blame. In choosing to ask this question and try to answer it in my research, I found that among these families there was an amazing resilience and also many achievements that have largely gone undocumented. It was actually quite a surprise. I'd met families like my own, women with sons around the same age as mine, but didn't know many other families who had treaded the path before us. And it was really reassuring and exciting for me to hear these people's stories. The lack of recognition of mothers and sons' achievements gives the impression that all single-parent families are doing badly. This false assumption is dangerous because it is internalized by mothers and children within these families, and it serves to legitimate when people experience personal difficulties and can make people feel as if they have little control over their life. When I do share the findings of my research, I hope it will serve as reassurance that the unconventional structure of the single-parent family doesn't define people's destiny. While family structure does shape some mundane elements of people's lives, single mothers and sons do exist in a space of possibility and opportunity despite inequalities. For me, these untold stories have much to tell about the ways people have negated disadvantage, about people's resilience, and perhaps most significantly, the gaps between transmitted stereotypes and people's lived experiences. Studying sociology enabled me to ask a big question that has been pertinent to the black community over many years and in different parts of the world. It gave me the chance to dig deeply into the topic. I think the reasons why people have not understood why some people have divergent experiences in these families is because they've made the assumption that it is the structure alone, rather than looking at the social conditions and other mediating factors. There are many mediating factors that determine whether a single-parent family is functional or not. Issues that are viewed as social problems are often complex, and I think it's important to delve deeply into them to understand the root causes, rather than looking for simple answers. So studying sociology enabled me to do that, and I would encourage others to think about what big questions move them and think about what discipline might enable them to investigate that. Sociology enabled me to do that, and there are many opportunities across the disciplines to find a different framework that can enable you to do like a similar investigation.